Hello all, this is Daaro DS. Welcome back for more Witch on the Holy Night. This is episode number 3. We're shortly getting off episodes as much as we can. I really want to continue this. We are in a day in our life 2. Continuing on from the school and whatnot. So this should be a pretty good episode. Let us load the data and continue on. Misaki's train station was brand new. What was once a little more than a dilapidated factory had been remodeled into a modern facility complete with its own department stores. When it opened, Aoko and her friends had celebrated it as a wonder of modernization, but in time it would too become an antiquated relic of a bygone era. She didn't have any shopping to do, so she kept walking. Part of her wanted to sit down and rest at a cafe, but wasting money here by herself would get a roommate all bent out of shape again. So she blinked and looked back over her shoulder. Just for an instant, out of the corner of her eye, she could have sworn she saw a suspicious somebody in a red dress. Ew. It was her imagination, like usual. She ignored the familiar chill running down her spine. Then, as if nothing had happened, she went back to walking home. Before long, the premonition faded, and all that remained was the clamor of the city. Without a heavy sigh. Honestly, even if it was just her imagination, that didn't make it any more pleasant. Even the mosquitoes in the summer aren't this bad. A little restraint would be nice, she grumbled under her breath. It's like they say, all things must pass. Complaining about how busy you are doesn't get you anywhere. It was annoying, but mosquitoes come in hand with summer. Bugs were drawn into fruit. You knew that was the right way to look at it. Is this her job, or is his job? I don't know. The kitchen's thick with oil and heat was in its afternoon salon. The carnage of lunch was over, and the dinner time rush loomed large on the horizon. Once they made it through that, the day would be all but finished. In the middle of the battlefield, standing all alone, was the new part-time worker. I have to wear this? He asked. His tone clearly marked him as a rookie. Believe me, I know how you feel, but it's the boss's orders, so just grin and bear it, okay? It's all for the future of a shopping arcade, or so he says. No, I hate to do this to you, but the rain stopped, so it's time to get going. If you survive, I'll buy you dinner. His garish orange coworker clasped his hands together in apology and saddled him with a totally unreasonable task. "10 years ago, Misaki City was a town of farmland and forests. Now everything had changed. Rows of buildings lined the streets, residential areas filled up with the multi-level apartment complexes. Around the stations, the former rural scenery was nowhere to be seen. The only exception was the Showa Inuzuka, known as the last bastion of old Misaki, was a pocket of repast preserved within the urban landscape. A long sloping road cut through the old residential district, far from the train station and domain that dominated the people's lives. Long ago, building a home in the higher ground was considered a taboo, and nobody lived above a certain elevation. The hill tower in the center of the town, Shiro Inuzuka, abided by that rule. The path ahead was devoid of houses. Though the paved road continued on for a while, eventually it was followed by the forest and replaced with a sort of mountain trail. A lonely vending machine along the way acted as a boundary line between the town and the hill. Even the children, always in search of new places to play, knew that there was nothing past it. Nothing, that is, except for the haunted house. Currently, Aoko was walking up that very hill. All of Misaki was laid out beneath her. Symmetrical rows of stores and houses almost looked like toys. It would make a nice picture if the sea were nearby, but sadly Misaki City was entirely landlocked. Still, though the sky was overcast now, on clear evenings, the scenery here was breathtaking. It was the only good thing about this climb, and today she had been denied even that. Man, I couldn't even ride my bike when it rains. There's no way in hell a bus would come all the way out here twice a day. We've been going to school this way for almost 2 years now, but it was a pain all the same. Huh? It's still locked? Means Alice isn't back yet. With a weary shrug, she placed her hands on the cold iron fence. Ever so quietly, the heavy gate swung open as if it were to welcome her inside. There is a haunted house high up on that hill. This piano music, it's so much. I know it because I've heard it plenty of times before. And it's from, I believe this piece is from the maybe late 1800s, maybe early 1900s. I forget the actual name of it. Really enjoy this piece. It was a story passed down from Misaki for many, many years. And with the modernization of the town, new rumors had begun to swirl. For example, they say even though the dilapidated house crumbled to dust years ago, lights can still be seen burning in the darkness at night. For example, they say untold hordes of crows gather on the hilltop, only to mysteriously vanish. For example, they say on days when the fog is thick, children who wander off into the woods will be spirited away, never to be seen again. For example, they say in the dead of night, a mysterious sound that can only be described as the shrieking can be heard as far away as the residential district. Aoko found that one particularly embarrassing. Finally, sometimes an unbelievably ritzy car can be seen driving up and down a long winding road. The rumors grew more numerous by the day. The house on the hill that should have rotted away had been revived, deep in the wilderness that people had dared not approach, hidden away in the darkness of the forest. It stood like a fairy tale come to life, a magical relic, from a bygone era. Kuonji Mansion. Kuonji Mansion. I think I got that. Everybody in Misaki knew about the witch's house on the hill. It was a genuine haunted house where Aoko Aozaki was currently boarding for reasons unknown. Needless to say, the haunted house was what everybody called it. It was a Western-style mansion with a long and storied history, brought over from England under certain circumstances. It was too small to be a dorm, but too large to be a home. The main building alone could fit 3 normal residences, and it was surrounded by a courtyard. Around the perimeter of the courtyard towered an iron fence covered in thorny vines. In addition, there was a detached secondary building on the grounds. With all that, there was no wonder things ended up getting embellished. To the residents of the town, there must have been something eerie about a spaciously luxurious mansion built on a hilltop. Dealing with the malicious slander, misconceptions, and discord was the price of being famous. On the top of that, since there were only 2 people living there, they couldn't complain if they were treated like vampires. I wouldn't put it past Alice, though. She put her hand on the front door. It was a stately double door that would pair with a nice brass lock, and yet there was nothing more so boorish as a keyhole. Pushing it open with the one hand, Aoko entered the so-called haunted house. By the way, vampires aside, it actually wasn't unheard of for ghosts to appear, depending on the circumstance. Ghosts. The clock. Like the weather outside, the lobby was cast in shades of gray. Perhaps it was the quirk of the architect, but there were almost no lamps in the entrance hall. The only illumination came from whatever sun or moonlight filtered in through the skylight to the 2 floors above. On rainy days, everything would be wrapped in a twilight room. And twilight gloom, I meant. And on moonless nights, the world itself seemed to freeze like a dying star. Aoko decided that the East Parlor was a good place to rest as any, but first she needed to go to her room and change into something more comfortable. She took the stairs running along to the wall to the 2nd floor landing. There was a 3rd floor attic further up, but she never so much as set foot inside the entire 2 years she'd been here. The Kuonji Mansion was roughly divided into 2 wings, east and west. Aoko had been given free reign over the entire east wing, but as far as she was concerned for the 2 rooms, it was more than enough. She had no need for doors that would trap you in a storybook world when they opened, or an attic that had been used as a storeroom for the past 5 years. Her room was at the end of the long hallway of the 2nd floor of the east wing. When she first moved in, she had been chosen to this modest room herself, not out of consideration, but simply because a smaller room would be easier to clean. It was furnished with a slightly larger than average bed, her favorite mahogany desk, a wardrobe, a chest of drawers for her coats, and 2 9-shelf bookcases. Those were the only things she brought up with her from her parents' house. Apparently, when push came to shove, she had been able to pare down the life she had built up for 16 years just that much. Right, I should check the watch. Well, I should check the watchtower I got from Alice. You need to confirm the results of the project that had kept her up all night. study next door was proof of the life she had been living for almost a year now, totally different from the one she had before. It was not a room for the sake of who she was, but who she would become. A solitary world that none but her could enter. Or at least, it should have been. But... whoa, it didn't just break, it vanished without a trace. I guess I'm not ready to make my own adjustments yet. Yeah, laugh it up, Robin. You better run. The trespasser that had been making itself at home in her study fluttered off. Though she wasn't particularly talented, tried her best and didn't fear failure. It was a freewheeling attitude that could almost be mistaken for optimism. She changed out of her uniform and went back downstairs. She sounds like me when I was a kid when I was scooting on the floor. That's too funny. The door on the eastern wall of the lobby opened to a deep dark hallway. Of course, the lack of windows meant it was pitch black, so with the lights off, she flipped the switch and entered the first door on the right. A life without electricity, huh? I don't even want to imagine it. Updating her parlor had been her idea. It was like a room straight out of a castle. The walls were decorated with extravagant patterns, while the floor was covered in a plush Persian carpet adorned with majestic sofas. And in the middle of it all stood an incongruous 30-inch television, blissfully unaware of its surroundings. Do I even belong here? I don't know. It lorded over the furniture around it like a naked emperor. The mansion's owner didn't like it, but for a commoner like Aoko, that unnatural feeling itself was an essential form of recreation. It had been a major point of contention when she first moved in, though they had since reached a mutual understanding about its place as a modern convenience. Mahogany, I think. Honestly, it was the pot calling the kettle black. I come from a pretty old-fashioned house myself. Feeling strangely happy, she decided to make herself something hot to sip on. Set some water to boil in the kitchen next door. Prepared the teapot and kettle, and once everything was ready, brewed up a steaming pot of black tea. Sank into the sofa with a contented sigh. This is the life. Took a sip of her tea, then another. Then another. Then another. Another! Just kidding. Her mind, lulled by the gentle tickling of the clock, drifted towards the thoughts of how she would spend the afternoon. A third sip. The plush sofa almost seemed to draw her in as she sank deeper into its comforting embrace. Oko's eyes fluttered open as she pushed herself up from the cushion. Who is this? It wasn't a dream, or a delusion. At some point, a girl had sat down across from her, and she hadn't even noticed. More or less unfazed, she reached out and felt her teacup. It was already ice cold. I fall asleep? She asked the girl across the table. Yes. You did? if she stayed silent, she might be mistaken for a beautiful doll. He was sitting on the sofa reading an old book. Yes, reading an old book. Her limbs were slender, and her alabaster skin looked as if it had never known the touch of the sun. Not a trace of human intention could be felt in the melancholic air. She had silky raven hair, darker than Aoko's, and her icy eyes were focused deliberately downward. Her black clothes resembling a nun's habit were the uniform of her school. If you asked Aoko, the gloom suited her well, almost too well. She was like a painting. There was a sense of unreality about her, as if she had been always exactly as she was. The delicate whiteness of her neck was enough to unrapture even Aoko, but who was of the same gender. This was the other resident of the haunted house. Her name was Kuonji Alice. She was 17. How long was I out? At least an hour. You'd catch a cold if you sleep here. Alice answered indifferently, but that's just how she was. Aoko paid no mind. He looked at the clock on the wall and said it was already 7 o'clock. She had been asleep for over 2 hours. Thinking back, it had been a rough day. As sleep-deprived as she was, it was no surprise that she'd ended up passing out on the sofa. Why didn't you wake me up? My tea I made got cold. It was already cold when I got here. Obviously, it was just venting. Aoko finished off the rest of her cold tea in a single gulp. In the poorly heated Kuonji mansion, that was enough to clear her head of cobwebs and wake her up. Even Fortuna and Mason isn't good cold. Welcome home, Alice. It seems that I can't even enjoy the occasional luxury without you. I don't know if today was unlucky or if it was divine punishment, but I'm actually considering visiting a shrine, just to be safe. She shrugged her shoulders and as if reassuring herself to fate. I take it something happened? After living together for almost 2 years, they were well aware of each other's quirks. They both had gotten their own way of asking questions. Alice probed Aoko for information without looking up from her book, and in response, Aoko bluntly reported the situation. First, I should apologize. That project I spent all night finishing was a total bust. I only took my eyes off it for a little bit, but I guess it boiled over and broke. Even though I reconfigured the circulation cord specifically to prevent that. He laughed it off like it was somebody else's problem. Go on. Well, something urgent came up this morning, so I had to rush down to school. Then I got roped up into babysitting some transfer student, which ate up my entire day. By the time I got back, it was already vanished without a trace. You aren't angry, are you? Please, if I got upset every time you broke something, we'd never stop fighting. I have replacements, so you can start again from the beginning. But Aoko, aren't you the one that's angry right now? Alice was unusually sharp today. At times like this, Aoko would hide her anger beneath a calm exterior. But setting that aside, yeah, I guess I am. That transfer student I mentioned was a real piece of work. Apparently he'd been living in the mountains and doesn't get our common sense at all. I know they say the mountains are a different world, but I didn't think that was actually true, Alice. Alice raised her head at the sound of her name, but Aoko kept complaining without waiting for a response. After all, she hadn't expected any sympathy in the first place. Of course, we got off on the wrong foot, but things didn't really get bad until I took him into a classroom. He actually thought it was a place where people got one-on-one tutoring from instructors. And that's not even the worst of it. How can I could understand if it was just that. After I was nice enough to explain what exactly the classroom was as simply as I could, do you know what he did? You know what he said? Okay, so what are the other classrooms used for? Can you believe it? Can you believe it? I mean, a classroom is a classroom, right? And no matter how bad my explanations were, he just meekly nodded along. It's like he doesn't even doubt anything at all. Maybe he has no imagination or something. Though he did seem to understand most of what I told him on the first try. So I guess he can't be a total idiot. It certainly is rare to see you so worked up about somebody. I had no idea you had a soft spot for hopeless cases like that. I couldn't care less about him, thanks. I'm just worried that he'll make a mess of something stupid. Or more to the point, she was worried about the probability that she would be the one forced to clean up that mess that was extremely high. That had to be what it was. If not, it would mean that she totally misunderstood the reason she couldn't get the transfer student she spent the entire day with out of her head. Anyway, he's definitely a strange guy. You two should probably get along great. Another world in the mountains does sound nice. However, her eyes told a total different story. It didn't matter if they would get along or not, because they were never going to meet. You're right. By the way, Alice, what are you reading? A derivative book on the spiritual evolution based on the spiritual diary. Swedenborg. Is that kind of a waste of time? It would be tedious if it were the original, yes, but I like this. But like I said, this is a knockoff. It dramatically exaggerates both Swedenborg's flaws and its merits. Like a well-written adventure novel, the synchronization can't stand in his way is a nice touch. Incidentally, it's your grandfather's handwriting. So the old man had that kind of hobby, huh? He must have had a pretty good sense of humor. I'm gonna miss him. At the mention of her grandfather, who was no longer in this world, Aoko became a bit wistful. As I recall, he contacted you just this summer. Can it? As far as I'm concerned, he's dead, okay? Aoko sighed and leaned back. Soft cushions yielded easily under her weight. We still have more to discuss, you know. Alice cast a quick glance at the sprawled out Aoko. Her body buried in the sofa was motionless as a corpse. It was clear that she had lost interest in talking. Aoko could almost feel Alice silently criticizing her. When she thought about that, the events of the day gradually began to seem less important. If she just ignored Alice's wordless censure, this conversation would end here. Eventually, they would both get up and go to bed, leaving things unresolved for another day. But Aozaki Aoko was not that kind of person. Fine, what is it? She addressed Alice without sitting up. Your failure today is disappointing. I told you, I'm sorry I put school on the back burner for a while, okay? At least I'm independent. If you say so. Alice's cold voice made Aoko want to gnash her teeth. She knew perfectly well what Alice wanted to say. She understood better than anybody. There was a gap between the face she put forward at school than the one she showed at home. Though it could be called hiding in plain sight, Alice always said it was a half-hearted way of doing things. In short, with that heavy silence, telling me to hurry up and make my decision. Today's failure wasn't a really big deal in the grand scheme of things. That careful balance between her home and school lives had simply and completely been, by chance, shifted towards the one at the expense of the other. Nevertheless, it was a clear sign of her naivety. This is something I have to decide for myself. Alice has no right to interfere. She'd only known for sure for the last year and a half. However, the premonition of what had haunted her for as long as she could remember. I've chosen. That day will surely come. It was no wonder her morals and conscience had been almost entirely worn away. Okay. You win, Alice. Let's do it this week. Is that fine? If you think so, if you think it'll be fine, then that's fine. Aoko bristled her and shook her head. She felt like she had heard something similar earlier that day. It seems she wasn't safe from that country boy, even in her own home. And I'll leave the preliminary arrangements to you. Something that has been still beyond my abilities. Shall we use the park? Yeah, that works. Oh, what about that other thing? Isn't that more urgent? I have it under control. If there's any changes in the forest, I'll let you know. Their business concluded. Alice took her book off her lap and went back to reading. They discussed everything that they needed discussing. Now they were just normal, more or less friendly roommates. Aoko grabbed her remote and switched on the TV. Since Alice was occupied with her book, she decided to turn into a variety of show that had started a while ago. Alice suddenly started to say something, but cut herself off. A delicate hand covered her mouth. She made a point of never allowing herself to say meaningless things. Sometimes the self-restraint kicked in too late, and she would make a gesture like she did just now. Except she used to say, instead of ah, didn't she? Aoko mused as she turned her gaze to her cute roommate. What is it? She turned down the volume of the TV, her strong-willed eyes lit up with cat-like mischief. It's nothing important, but... Alice looked away in embarrassment, unsure if she should answer. At times like these, her expressions showed real warmth and a vexing likability. If her father could see her now, even he would have to admit her name suited her perfectly. I saw something strange on the way home today. I thought it would be nice to tell somebody, that's all. Aoko nodded her on. Really? It's not that interesting. Just that there's something I can't understand no matter how much I think about it. Aoko, you know why a cat the size of a person will be running around town making meal deliveries? What? I know what this is. For an instant, Aoko thought this was another one of Alice's bad attempts at telling jokes. It was a perfectly natural response. But even as she didn't understand Alice's sense of humor at all, this is more fantastic than she usually came up with, and she seemed seriously worried. She was probably talking about something that she had really seen. There are a couple of things off with that story. Why don't we break that down point by point? By all means. I thought it might be some kind of scam myself. But I couldn't fathom what the point could possibly be, so I decided to ask you about it. Could it really be as simple as somebody dressing up in a finely crafted catsuit to deliver food at local restaurants? I'd be more worried about what kind of person would actually do something like that personally. Alice nodded along with Aoko's words, almost imperceptibly. But different strokes for different folks, I guess. There are people like us and people who live shut in away in the mountains. Who knows what kinds of weirdos are out there? If it were me, I would have just asked them what they were doing directly. At that, Alice averted her eyes just a bit. A delivery cat roaming through the darkening residential district, huh? Throwing the glow of the setting sun, and it sounds like something out of a fantasy story. Anyway, what should we do for dinner tonight? Since we're already talking about it, how about delivery? Well, while we're on the subject, let's just do that. Aoko was beaming. She loved delivery. There was no set dinner schedule in this mansion, so instead, they adopted the ad hoc system where, if one of them actually felt inclined to cook, they would make sure to cook enough for two. At worst, this meant they might both end up going without dinner for an entire week, but it was the system they felt most comfortable with. It wasn't clear if they found the time or effort of cooking troublesome, or if they simply enjoyed the act of ordering delivery itself. At any rate, nights like tonight weren't rare at all, and the restaurants of Misake had grown weary of orders coming from the mansion. Yes. Stop it. Talk, man, talk. Let's do this. Dealing with them meant coming out of the top of this huge hill at odd hours of the night, so it was no wonder they weren't very popular. It's not 8 o'clock yet, so we should still have time. I'm kind in the mood for kongetsu. I haven't had their tsukimi soba in a while. Aoko shuffled through the various delivery menus laid out on the table with relish, looking for anything that caught their eye. Then, without sparing her as much as a glance, Alice casually interjected. Sorry, but I've already eaten. Those simple words, Aoko's body froze. All the delivery places in a minimum order of 2 items. Alice's coupon. God, that was horrible. Without Alice's cooperation, dinner was off the table. She tried to summon somebody all the way up here with a single order of soba. They'd probably just as likely laugh in their face. Incidentally, the restaurants in town had come up with a countermeasure against the house on the hill. Starting next year, the minimum order for deliveries will be 3 items. Aoko and Alice were blissfully unaware of the growing support for this demonic rule. You backstabber! So, that's why you were late getting back. I should have known. You always come straight home. Then the factory and the bus ride and walk trip only takes you 20 minutes. I should have known something was up when you got home after 5 o'clock. Sadly, at the time, Aoko had been too groggy at her nap to notice anything other than the fact that she had fallen asleep. How could you do this to me? I thought we had an unspoken agreement. If one of us gets food alone, we bring something home for whoever stayed behind. Isn't that what we did for me the last time I went out to eat? It was hard to say how serious she was, but Aoko was definitely angry. After all, she had woken up hungry, and since being summoned on the way to school, and since being summoned to school, only tea had passed her lips. The fact that her stomach wasn't howling right that second was nearly a miracle and of itself. It was her own fault, of course, but that was the furthest thing from her mind, and she was already lost in her rant against Alice's perceived bullying. Why did you do this, Alice? Why? By last time, I assume you mean the sushi incident. You mean the sushi incident. As in, the last time you went out to get sushi in the city, but for some reason only brought back a plastic bag of convenience store food. Aoko had stirred up a hornet's nest. Hey, it was better than bringing you nothing at all, right? Some things are better left unsaid, Aoko. Alice's stare was frigid. Certainly it had been a mistake to stand next to Alice and excitedly describe how the sushi had circled around the restaurant while she silently ate her convenience store's box lunch. But Aoko couldn't stop herself as she was fascinated by anything new in her eyes. The conveyor belt sushi bars that had started cropping up recently were a modern marvel. Even honesty can be a sin, depending on the situation. I get it. Then, I take it we're even now? Alice went back to her book without denying it. The fact that she didn't confirm it either was a little scary. Well, today was a disaster. I guess I'll go scrounge something up in the kitchen. She announced her intentions to nobody in particular. Oh, I almost forgot. Where did you eat dinner, Alice? Alice's page-turning hand frozen midair. Uh-oh. Suddenly she shut the book and had been reading this whole time and stood up. She briskly walked towards the parlor, book in hand. Arriving at the door, she paused and turned back towards Aoko. Do you really want to know? Well, just a little. Shocked by her forcefulness, Aoko shrank back. Alice continued nonchalantly. Couldn't help it. Leftover meal from that. I got a leftover meal from that cat. Meow. She answered tersely and left the parlor. All I hear is a have been exploded. Holy shit. Oh boy. Alright. I'm gonna end the episode right here. 43 minutes. We're gonna keep on going. This is a streak of about 45-minute episodes. So this is the end of this episode, or this chapter, I believe. Or chapter, and maybe it's another, I don't know, we'll find out. But this is the end of what I'm going to do. This is about the end of what I'm going to do today for Witch on the Holy Night. I hope you guys enjoyed today, as what happened yesterday, I think, is the next chapter. But this is going to be it. Oh, man. We are kind of in the middle of exploring what kind of... We're still in the process of learning what kind of characters that Aoko and the newly found character Alice, and also the other guy. We're still trying to learn what kind of characters they are, what they're trying to portray, and how their demeanors are. I hope you guys enjoyed today's episode, Daaro DS, right here. Stay tuned for more visual novels and anime-related content. Thank you all for watching, and stay classy. Peace.